Hey now, before we get into this one, I just wanted to let everybody know that I did something a little crazy and unprecedented, and I took the need for a credit card off the 7-day free plus trial. Yes, I am a true wild man. I mean, really, who does that? But now all you have to do is make a username and password, and you get full access to everything for 7 days. No need to remember to cancel before an upcoming charge or anything like that. I mean, we know how the game is played, right? Well, I hope you'll take a look behind my curtain and like it enough to stay, but there's only one way to find out. It's hard to get something for nothing in this world, so treat yourself.
The planet's puppet masters almost surely have a plan. There's clearly maybe something there beyond the realm of man. And until we thoroughly tested every last close-chested view, I find the more we think we know, the less we really do. Where would we be without THC? 'Cause we know they're lying to us, just don't know to what degree. Where would we be without THC? The Higher Side Chat Show. Greg Carlwood and Company.
Serenity now, higher side chatters, doing the thing from the Sunshine State. I'm Greg Carlwood, and it feels to me like the SS Earth is intentionally being steered right into a cosmic iceberg. We can all see it, but have little power to change course. And those who do have their hands on the wheel assure us that everything is fine when we can clearly see that it isn't. And those with their hands on the wheel are they themselves, only following orders from those above them who have charted this course decades in advance. Because as today's powerhouse guest David Icke has been saying almost as long as I've been alive, we are individual points of infinite consciousness having a human experience in a hijacked reality overlaid with a plasma matrix run by a cult of lieutenants in the Archon army tasked with generating low vibrational energy on a planetary scale on which these Archons feed. It seems the name of the game is controlling man's perception, behavior, and attention, and ensuring that we're all too distracted and stressed to seek true gnosis or reflect upon our true nature. Well, although he's never hurt anyone, never advocated for violence, opposes every war, and simply encourages everyone to seek freedom and find their own way, this is the core of the message that has gotten David Icke banned from over 30 countries, while trendy influencers with ties to the cult itself are given algorithmic support to co-opt and massage David's message into something the cult can tolerate. Today he's back to talk about the state of our chaotic world in his new book, The Roadmap, which clocks in at nearly 1,000 pages. It's an updated and expanded version of his 1998 classic, The Biggest Secret, with all the benefits of 30 added years of study and full-time connecting. You can also find him on his very own streaming platform at iconic.com. It is the 4th time he's done the dance with me, and I couldn't be more honored to get into it. He doesn't kiss the ring or the wall. The Loosh Farm educator, big cult critic, and true godfather of modern conspiracy culture, David, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead, Greg.
Well, it is a true honor and pleasure. You belong on the Mount Rushmore of our times, if you ask me. And before we get into the new book, I've been listening to your recent episodes of The Dot Connector, where you cover recent events, and there's no shortage of things to cover there. People are very nervous about this war with Iran, and we have these situations where we see videos of people on the street that seem to be cheering. One side says, oh, they're cheering for their liberation from an oppressive regime. And then other people say, actually, they're saying that now that you've killed their religious leader, they're vowing vengeance. And we just have all this mixed messages, the Strait of Hormuz drama, the thing with maybe taking Cuba. And I know a lot of this is designed to steal our attention and leave us stressed and confused. But in a practical sense, talk to us about the things you actually see going on right now. It seems like you expect this whole thing to kind of land on a lockdown 2.0 scenario with energy conservation policies and limits on gas and oil and all that kind of stuff. Is that right?
Well, the potential for all that is obvious. And, you know, what I've been saying all these years, and unfortunately, great chunks of the so-called alternative media, that which gets all the algorithmic support, like you've just said, they don't get this level. And without that, you can't get anything, basically. And that's the level that it's coming from. You see, if you fall for the left and right in politics, if you fall for Christianity against Islam, against Hinduism, all the others, you're seeing us and them. You're seeing different factions that ultimately are controlled by the same force, the same source. Now, that doesn't mean all Christians or Muslims or Hindus or the left and right are themselves individually controlled by this force, but the structure in which they operate and the structure within which they perceive reality is controlled by this force. Let's look at it this way. You are one of, they tell us, 8 billion people, okay. And the number of people in full knowledge who are manipulating that 8 billion is tiny. It is ludicrously tiny compared with the 8 billion. So you ask, how do we, the few, the very few, as we always have, by the way, throughout history, the few have always controlled the many, how do they do it? Well, first of all, if you are looking mathematically at the few and the 8 billion, it should be impossible. The few should not be able to control the world. And I hear constantly over the last 36 years I've been on this road, a few people can't control the world. That's ridiculous. That's impossible. Oh, really? Just hold on a second. The actions, okay, it's only officially, but the actions of two people, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, are now affecting potentially every man, woman, and child on planet Earth. Two people. So obviously it is possible for a few to control the world. But how do you do it? Well, there's many things involved, but here's the key ones. First of all, if you're faced with 8 billion people in unity who know what you're doing and know you exist and you're manipulating from the background, the people they think are in control, if they're in unity and they're informed of your existence, you have got no frickin' chance. It's over. So two things. First of all, you have to hide what you're doing and you have to put your front men and women in the public eye who you lead the population to believe are actually making the decisions and running the show. People like Trump and Netanyahu and all these others, Starmer in Britain.
The gophers.
Yeah, the gophers. They're just gophers. But then you have to break up the unity of the target population. And you do that by breaking them up into rigid, unquestioning belief systems. These are political belief systems, these are religious belief systems, these are cultural belief systems. And I've said so many times over the years, Greg, that if they don't care what you believe, as long as you believe it rigidly and at the exclusion of all other possibility.
Yes.
And as a result of that, you are in a perceptual box. They put you in a perceptual box. It doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Christian or a MAGA or progressive, whatever. You're in a box. And what these boxes do, and, you know, people talk about religion, but my father used to talk about bricks and mortar religion, you know, temples and synagogues and churches and stuff. But religion is a mentality, and it's not confined only to bricks and mortar. religion. For instance, if you break down orthodox science, which is very anti-religion, you find that it works in exactly the same way as religion does. And you break down political ideologies and they work exactly the same as religion does. It's a mentality. And that mentality says, this is what I believe, and it's immovable, and I ain't going anywhere beyond this belief system, because if I do, then I'm no longer whatever I call myself. If I go a bit more towards the right, then I'm no longer a lefty. If I go a bit more to the left, I'm no longer a MAGA. If I open my mind to other possibilities beyond my religious belief system, I'm no longer what I call myself, what I believe. And also, I'm immediately being accused of dabbling in the occult because I'm going outside of the religious boundaries and into other areas of possibility. Now, what does occult mean? It means hidden. It's hidden knowledge. And hidden knowledge can be used grotesquely, and it is, or it can be used to set us free. It's not the knowledge, it's how you use it. And then you look at science, and science is a rigid, orthodox science is a rigid belief system. This is how it is, and that's it. And if you go beyond it and start looking at other possibilities, then you are a pseudoscientist or dabbling in the paranormal. So basically, all these belief systems work the same in that they are there to hold you in a belief system that stops you exploring beyond the belief system. That then provides the most magnificent environment for the most essential element of the few controlling the many, which is divide and rule, because you play the belief systems off against each other. You play science off against religion, you play left off against right, you play culture off against culture, religion off against religion, and you set the target population at war with itself. And so if you are looking at that level, then the current situation in Iran basically becomes religiously Christianity and Judaism against Islam.
Yes.
And politically, it's left against right. So you've got these built-in divisions, and everything seems like random in the sense of what's happening. Why is he doing this? Why has he done that? He knows the consequences. Well, you mean he didn't know they'd shut the Strait of Hormuz and have all these consequences for energy supplies and food production? I mean, well, what's he doing? That is confusing. Unless you realize that Trump's an idiot, then you can see that the people are pulling his strings behind the scenes. But that's the level that we're looking at in the mainstream media and most, to be fair, of the alternative media. The central part of it gets all the algorithms.
Yes, and I just wanted to point out that it seems like while a lot of these new figures have come on the scene of the alt media, and some of them are just recycled from the traditional media, like Tucker Carlson, they will do these interviews. Tucker Carlson's been stepping all over my territory, interviewing guests that I've had on for the last decade, and funny enough, he hasn't called you up, but I just think the curious thing is that the message is like almost 80-90% there. They act like they just stumbled upon it when you've been writing about it since the mid-90s. But the commonality between Tucker, Ian Carroll, and Candace Owens is that they all cater to the Christian side.
Yeah, exactly.
One degree or another. I think Candace says she's Catholic, and I think Ian Carroll says he is in line with God and the Word of God. They, maybe they don't say Christian exactly, but they definitely are kind of curating that kind of content and putting the Christian lens front and center. Whereas you say, look, that's another box. They're going to use that against you. And right now we are in a religious war. I thought we were past a lot of this stuff, but it definitely is being framed that way. They're saying that a lot of these elite are trying to manifest a Revelations end time prophecy where they actually have to make Israel the bad guy on the national stage so that Israel gets destroyed, so the new temple gets built. It is all kind of LARPing crazy nonsense to me, but we are also seeing it happen. So when you have these alternative voices saying most of what you're saying, but also saying, and we should all be Christians, I mean, that's kind of a very important distinction.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. But what they're saying is some of what I'm saying. They're not saying anything like the totality of it. And this is what I've been talking about. If I could just finish that point, and then I really want to get into what you've just said. The point about the fact that you see the chaos and the apparent randomness and the what are they doing and confusion at this level. But if you go to the next level, into the shadows, ultimately into another dimension, but via this global cult that I talk about, this global network of secret societies with an interlocking mission control, what is happening now is exactly what they want. It's not confusion to them, it's cold calculation. Because I have this phrase which goes, you can only see what's coming if you know what's planned to come. And if you don't know what's planned to come and where it's all leading, the world looks random and unexplainable and bewildering. But if you know what's planned, where we're being taken, suddenly the randomness becomes very clear stepping stones to that outcome. So you look at the COVID period, and that was basically a dry run of how much will people acquiesce to what we tell them to do? Well, vast, overwhelming numbers just acquiesce to it. Will they have the jab if we tell them it will save them from the virus that we've never proven exists? And so on. But now, in those COVID days, you had the dynamic that the governments and authority was telling you what to do. What they're moving to here now is circumstances stop you doing what they don't want you to do. And if you look at basically society and how it functions on energy, supplies of energy in all its different forms. It functions on the population having enough to eat. So if you can target the very foundations on which society depends, you're going to destroy society. Now, what I was saying about Trump through his election campaign, and got enormous abuse for it, was that he was a cult operative. He was a globalist, for want of a term, cult operative, who was put forward to tell the target population of what is known as MAGA, people who were skeptical of many things that were happening in the world, to tell them what they wanted to hear. So they got him into power. And once into power, I said he'll do two things. First of all, he'll follow the cult agenda, whatever they tell him to do. And secondly, he will facilitate the other point of the agenda, the real point of the agenda, which is the AI digital control system, including the fusion of AI and humans, so that AI becomes the human mind. It becomes the human thinking processes. And they've openly talked about this now. So when he got in, all these people you mentioned, these influencers, many of which came out of the, as you rightly say, out of the mainstream, they were like, oh no, he's not doing what we thought he would do. Well, I've been calling Trump out since 2016 for what he is. It's not difficult. They say, oh no, we now realize he's controlled by Israel. Well, have a look at the first term, man. Have a look at his history with Roy Cohn and massive Zionist connections to his life and his father Fred's life. His father Fred was a close mate of Benjamin Netanyahu when he was Israeli ambassador to the UN. Jared Kushner, now Trump's son-in-law, has known Netanyahu his entire life because Charles Kushner, who went to jail and was pardoned by Trump, is now the US ambassador to France. he was a longtime mate again of Benjamin Netanyahu. And now Trump and Netanyahu are together. You've got Jared Kushner doing the fake negotiations that were always going to lead to war with Iran. I mean, you don't have to do much research to see that Trump was always owned by the Zionist cabal, which itself is owned by the cult cabal. And now they're saying, oh, we never knew. And I look at these influencers, some of which you mentioned there, and you can add Joe Rogan to that. He won't talk to me either, just like Carlson. You then say, well, what's going on? Well, this is what's going on. So you are this cult serving this non-human force in another dimension of reality. And you look at COVID and you think, okay, well, we had to do it because it was part of our agenda, part of our sequence. Know the outcome and you'll see the journey, as I have constantly said. But what it has done, it's woken a lot of people up to the fact that what they dismissed before, there is some kind of conspiracy going on. They've actually seen that there is, right? So what do we do about this? And how do we pull these skeptics now back in the fold by thinking that they are opposing us, but actually are supporting the direction we want to take society? Because we have to get them on board with AI for a start. So then you ask, well, who are they listening to? Where are they getting their information from to kind of start to wake up? Well, they're not getting it, they would say, from the mainstream media, which we own. They have contempt for that, so we can't do it that way. So where are they getting their information from? Well, they're getting their information from this alternative media that calls itself the independent media. That's where they're getting it from. Okay, we have to get involved in that. We have to integrate that big time, right? So you move your people in. And of course, what we have now is control by algorithm. So I have 822,000 people follow my page on X, but the number of people actually see what I post is tiny compared with that 822,000. People are always telling me that, never see your post. They have to go to the page, otherwise they don't see them. And then you've got, as you rightly point out, you've got these people who came in, your Ian Carrolls and your Candace Owens and your Tucker Carlsons and Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, they were all Trumpers. So they were campaigning for Trump and massively helped Alex Jones, another one, to get him elected. So he's over the line. The job's done. He's in official power, not real power, but official power. And then they suddenly start turning against him. But it don't matter now because he's in. And so you then look at the fact, and you quite rightly make the point, the vast overwhelming number of these people are controlled by their Christian belief system. Tucker Carlson's is, Candace Owens is, she's a Roman Catholic, as you say, and Russell Brand's been, had his baptism into Christianity and all that stuff. There is a common theme there too. And what they're doing, and I would make this point too, it's not always easy to see which, but some of them will know exactly what they're doing. But they don't have to. They just have to be given, they just have to have a certain belief system. They have to have a massive algorithmic support and promotion, and they'll do what you want to do anyway. So what is that? Okay, if you were looking at the situation and the wake up that happened as a result of COVID, not in everybody, of course, but in larger numbers than I'd have ever seen, then you'd say, well, the genie is out the bottle a bit, isn't it? But we're not going to be able to put the genie totally back now because people have seen there's some kind of conspiracy. What we need to do is hold the line. Hold the line at here and no further. So you bring these people in, and they are focused almost entirely on politics. And there is a conspiracy. Yeah, there is. We never thought before, but there is. But it's only politics. So now your focus is on your Trumps and your Harrises and your Starmers and all these people and your Netanyahus. But it's not going. It's another form of what I've just talked about. It's another form of belief system underpinned by the Christian belief system, limitation of, stops you going further. That's what's happening. It's called the Overton window. The Overton window, for people who haven't come across that, is that area of acceptable debate within a society beyond which you're either mad or bad or dangerous. And as a cult, as a manipulative force, you want to control the two polarities of the Overton window. You want to control those who are for what you want, and you want to control those who are against what you want, or at least speak against what you want, because then you control the game. Yeah, you know, as I've said so many times, if you're going to control a football match, you want to control both sides and the referees. No good controlling one side. You'll influence the match, but you won't know what the score is going to be before the game starts. To do that, you need to control both sides and the referee. And then you introduce Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a con man. He is a cult operative, and he is a front man for these companies. He's not really running them. I mean, I quote someone in the roadmap who's a former employee, quite a high employee actually, at Tesla, who says they only ever saw him once a fortnight at Tesla. He's not running those companies, he's fronting them up. He told Rogan once, was it Rogan, or he told someone once, I saw an interview that he did, that he spent between 60 and 80% of his time doing engineering and development. Well, of course he doesn't. He spends most of his time, if most of it's really him, on X posting, like machine gun fire. He's endlessly doing interviews and all the other things that he does. He's obviously not running those companies, certainly not running SpaceX. I mean, are you kidding? These are run by other people for common reasons. So I'd been tracking Musk for a very long time, years, because I could see he was a con man, and I was just keeping a bloody good eye on him. And then it was announced that he was going to buy Twitter. And I thought, this is a scam, so let's have a look at what form the scam takes. Well, it didn't take long, because the story was, and they're all stories, Greg, they're all stories to hold your attention and manipulate your perception of reality, just stories. So the story was that Musk is a free speech absolutist. Now, that's an absolute joke. We talk about having a sense of humor to claim that. But he was buying Twitter because he wanted free speech. Okay. So he said that the deep state basically was controlling Twitter before. Well, that was bloody obvious. And he released these so-called Twitter files to release documents and emails confirming that the deep state was controlling what could be posted on Twitter and couldn't be. So, okay. So what you're saying, Mr. Musk, is the deep state controlled Twitter before you took it over. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So why did they bloody sell it to you then? Because they didn't need to. And this is the other thing, people say, oh, Musk bought Twitter. Well, officially, yes, but there was a lot of other of the usual suspects who have absolute contempt for freedom of speech who also bought it with you. People like Saudi princes, for instance, they love freedom of speech. Larry Ellison and all these other characters. So anyway, before he bought it, a lot of the alternative media had been skeptical of the bloke. They were saying, oh, no, this bloke's a transhumanist. He wants to fuse humans with AI and all that stuff. The moment he bought Twitter and allowed people back on, he was suddenly one of us. Oh, he's great, that Elon. All the questions about Elon Musk and his agenda that were asked before were no longer being asked, because now he's one of us. But the game was given away when he appointed this World Economic Forum stalwart, Linda Yaccarino, as his CEO at Twitter that became X. And she said, we believe in freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach.
Right, right.
So what she's saying is, you can say what you want to an extent, but if we don't like it, then very few people are going to see it. She was saying shadow banning.
Yeah, exactly.
When she says, if it's awful but lawful, or lawful but awful, you're going to struggle to find it on X. Shadow banning. Exactly. But shadow banning those that are saying things that those that control these people don't want people to see, yes. But, and this is the significance of some of the people you mentioned, Greg, massively boosting those that are saying things that they do want people to see. And so what they've been doing is orchestrating the Overton window. I watched an interview with Tucker Carlson. It was from March 2025, and he's interviewing Steve Witkoff. Now, Steve Witkoff, along with Jared Kushner, both of them ultra-Zionists, in Kushner's case, ultra-Zionists, they conducted on Trump's say-so, well, who told Trump to say so, these negotiations for a peace deal with Iran that absolutely were never going to produce any results, because the people that own Witkoff and own Kushner, Israel, wanted a war. So that obviously they're not going to go in there and find a way of avoiding war. But this interview with Carlson and Witkoff, first of all, the first 52 seconds of Carlson's intro to Witkoff was basically past the sick bag, saying what an honest man he was and all this stuff. I mean, that's the last thing he ever was. But there was another point in the chat where Carlson talks about, no, this was another chat with a guy called Brett Weinstein, who's another come out of nowhere and suddenly everywhere. But the cover story of many of these people is it's not Trump. No, Trump's not doing it. He's just been badly advised. Oh, yeah. Well, you mean he's an idiot then? And so he says, Carlson, that there are people advising him who have a really bad track record of calling things. And you go, well, get a mirror, mate. This is the guy whose whole record is of bad calling things in terms of Carlson. He was a supporter at the time of the invasion of Iraq, which was the most obvious scam to anyone with half a brain cell on active duty.
Right.
And then he supports Trump into office and then goes, oh, no, well, what's happening? And he's also said in the last few days that it's good that J.D. Vance, who employs his son, by the way, Carlson's son, that J.D. Vance is going to hold negotiations with Iran because Vance is an honest and credible man. And you're like, what are you talking about? However, look, Carlson, Owens, Carroll, all these people, they are the opposition to what the cult wants. They control the Overton window as a result.
While you were talking about Elon, your phrase came to mind. You can only see what's coming if you know it's planned to come. And in the book, you talk about the Technate. And I think Elon really does get talked about too much. He gets too much mental real estate out there, but this is so important. This came from your book. To quote the book, Musk's grandfather, Joshua Heidelman, and his Technocracy Inc. sought to overthrow elected Democratic government in the U.S. and Canada and replace it with appointed technocrats and bureaucrats. Sounds familiar. A Technocracy Inc. publication in 1938 stated the Technate will encompass the entire American continent from Panama to the North Pole because the natural resources and the natural boundary of this area make it an independent, self-sustaining geographical unit. The proposed Technate spanning from Venezuela in the north of South America up through Panama, Central America, and Mexico to include Canada and Greenland. And then you say, we see why Trump, Musk, and their fellow billionaires seek to take over Panama, Greenland, and absorb Canada as the 51st state. Greenland is currently owned by Denmark, and Trump picked as his ambassador to Denmark another member of the Peter Thiel Circle, Ken Howery, who established with Thiel the Venture Capital Founders Fund. Howery, a friend of Musk, was ambassador to next door Sweden in Trump's first term. They always play the long game coordinated by the astral archons. I will pull up the map they envisioned 90 years ago, but talk to us about this a little bit more. It seems so lofty, and a lot of it is kind of just talk, but this talk that people think is random and just off the top of Trump's head, it's not random. It goes back to Elon's grandfather, who I believe was arrested for trying to do this. It was seen as subversive to the established order. And now years later, his grandson is basically like, no, we need this. So I'll pull up the map while you talk about it here a little bit.
Well, Joshua Haldeman, who operated out of Canada and supported Adolf Hitler, and was arrested at one point in Canada. He, after the war in the early 50s, up sticks and moved to South Africa. And the reason he moved there, as I explain in the book, was because of apartheid. He supported apartheid, so did his wife. And there, Mae Musk was born, the daughter that gave birth to Elon Musk. And the interesting, real topical update, Greg, in all this, is the speech that Pete Hegseth, the so-called Secretary of War now, made, in which he talked about the greater North America. And he described a land acquisition and absorption, basically, by the United States that mirrored the map of the Technate by Joshua Haldeman and the other crowd in the Technocracy Inc. operation in the 1930s. So the idea is, I've been writing about this since the 1990s, is ultimately to have a world government which would not be elected, it would be selected bureaucrats, technocrats, experts. And by the way, for people who haven't come across it, that's what technocracy means. Technocracy is appointed governments, not elected governments. And what they've been doing, because they play the long game, and it's not coming from the characters that we see. It's coming from here. It's coming from here deep in the shadows, ultimately another dimension. And therefore, they're playing the long game. They're calculating this over a long period of what we call time. And thus, these politicians, they're here today and they'll push it on a little bit in their little period, and then others will replace them and they'll push it on a little bit. But it's all orchestrated from here. So you have this plan for a world government of technocrats, appointees, not elected people. And under the world government would be a series of superstates around the world, of which this greater North America Technate would be one of them. That's the whole way that it's all been planned. And then they want to break countries up into regions that are powerless against the the central dictatorship of the world government and the Technate superstates. And under that edifice of control would be the population, would be the people. And what we are having potentially now is that the withdrawal of energy supplies and quite potentially food supplies around the world is offering the impetus for one of the great parts of this agenda, which is preventing the people moving. People talk about 15-minute cities, and I've written about these at some length over the years, where they want to break up cities into little enclaves, little communities, where everything you need, so they say, people like the World Economic Forum, will be within 15 minutes walk or 15 minutes cycle ride from your home. And that you will have number plate cameras to stop you, even if you have a car by then, from leaving that area without permission. And so let's look at the potential outcome of this tremendous reduction in global fuel supplies alone. Never mind everything else that oil is used for and made for, and things are made from it. You're not going to be able to drive your bloody car if you don't have fuel to make it work. And I mean, people say, oh yeah, but what about electric cars? Oh yeah. Where do you think the electricity comes from? Overwhelmingly still comes from these fuels ultimately. So you have the potential, like I said earlier, to go from we are telling you you have to lock down to you've got no choice because you can't go anywhere because there's not the fuel. And they're already talking in places, they're already talking in Britain and wider afield of limiting the access to fuel to try and save supplies, which will mean that we're going back to things like working from home, to not being able to travel, not being able to move. I mean, they don't want people flying everywhere.
Yeah, look at what's going on with air travel. 4-hour wait to get through TSA. I mean, you hear that on the news and nobody's booking flights anywhere. You just don't want to deal with it unless you really must for some reason. But yeah, crashed planes and then also these huge waits. It is really crazy.
This is the thing, Greg. If you look, even before this situation with fuel supplies massively advancing it, you look at the war on travel and the war on the private car. You have, as you say, what's happening in the airports, which is a real disincentive to go anywhere. And then you have the war on driving, on motorists. In this country, the Labour government, which is basically the equivalent of your Democrats, and the Labour councils that run the urban areas, they have been introducing 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in the cities.
Mm-hmm.
I went to London. There's a mayor there called Sadiq Khan, who's doing everything the cult wants. And it's like dystopia, mate. You're driving along and there's cameras everywhere picking up your speed, and people are being done for like 24 miles an hour. It's like a dystopia. It's like a sci-fi movie where everyone's going really slow, even though there's no cars in front of them. They're going slow because if they go any faster, they'll get fined and lose their license. But if they're a driver for a living, they'll lose their job.
Right. Big Brother is watching. And another thing I heard about this is they're actually looking to, in the next couple of years of cars, add AI to the cars where they can algorithmically determine if you're a sober driver or a distracted driver. So if the computer inside the car says, I think he's had one drink too many, or I think they're looking at their phone too much, the car will just stop for you, and all in the name of safety, of course. But this is crazy. It's like a breathalyzer in everyone's car. Not that I want drunk people driving around, but this is how they justify more control in your lives. So I wanted to cut in here because we are at the second hour transition, and we've talked a lot about the people involved. And I do want to get beyond the gopher level in this second hour and make it a bit weirder. But let me slide this into the first. So we talked about at the beginning how your new book, The Roadmap, is an updated version of The Big Secret. And when it comes to like little details that I never hear anywhere else that are new, this is something I wanted to make sure we threw in. So I love your work that you've done on the cult worship of Saturn and the Saturn moon matrix. And I assume some of what you've added is this overlap with the electric universe researchers and the work that's been done on plasma over the last 30 years. I think I learned about the hexagon storm at Saturn's North Pole from you years ago, as well as the I formation at the South Pole, but this part has to be new. You write, graphene has been theorized since 1947, became a reality in 2004, and today it's used in semiconductors, electronics, and electric batteries, among much else, of course, the vax and all that stuff. Its atoms are arranged as a hexagon honeycomb. If the hexagon represents the frequency of Saturn, does this mean that graphene in the body connects people with this frequency? This would make sense with my contention that Saturn is broadcasting low frequencies to the Earth, amplified by technology within the moon. Graphene and its derivative graphene oxide appears black because it absorbs all visible light wavelengths and is phenomenally strong, the strongest metal ever measured on a microscopic scale. Black is the color associated with Saturn. Most significantly, it is a tremendous conductor of electricity and even a superconductor. Man, so yeah, we can pick apart the new alternative media and Elon Musk and all that stuff. Some people are talking about that. No one is talking about this. To me, that is a huge hit with the Saturn symbolism matrix that seems to touch almost everything. Graphene, the hexagon shape, the color. I feel like that's a really strong hit.
Well, the thing is that people don't realize how much Saturn symbolism is all around them. I mean, the Judaistic god of Saturn is called El and is symbolized as a cube. And another symbol of Saturn is the black cube.
Right.
And you have the classic symbol of Saturn, which is the Star of David. That's an ancient symbol of Saturn. And the name Rothschild actually comes from that symbol. The Rothschilds, in the days of Mayer Amschel Rothschild, who started the Rothschild banking financial dynasty in Germany, in Frankfurt, they lived in a house in Frankfurt that had a red Star of David on the house. And in their name was Bauer. They were a Middle Ages family called Bauer. They were an occult family, actually. And they then changed their name to Rothschild,
Right,
which in German is Red Shield, which is the Star of David. So it, in their terms, so it was a symbol of Saturn and spawned the very name Rothschild. The Rothschilds then enormously funded the movement of people out of Germany after the Second World War, and indeed before, into Palestine. And now we have the flag of Israel is the Star of David. And the Star of David is not a uniquely Jewish symbol. You can find it everywhere. I mean, I've been to Japan a few times to speak, and all around the Japanese temples, you see things like swastikas and stuff. In Asia, you see the Star of David symbol. And so it's not unique to Jewish people. It's a symbol of Saturn. And if you look at all these different religions and secret societies, Saturn symbolism comes up again and again. One of the things that I point out in the roadmap, and I pointed out in previous books, is how the sigil of Saturn, as it's called, is the whole basis of the Freemasonic compass symbol. They are the same. And if you look at the logo for Balmoral in Scotland, which is one of the homes, the many homes of the British royal family, it's the sigil of Saturn. It's not a little bit like it. It is it, right? So everywhere you kind of look, you see these symbols of Saturn. And as I've passed through the years, the decades, I've not sat in a darkened room and come to these conclusions. It's been done from hard research as well. And people who have, they don't go into the esoteric at all, but they have concluded that the rings of Saturn are not natural, that they have been created.
Yes. That's another big thing I want to ask you about, because that guy in particular, I almost interviewed, but he was already into his 90s. Then he passed in 2018. But just to add to the thing you said about the Rothschilds and the Red Shield, like, this is Conspiracy 101. I've heard this many times, that they were the Bowers, then they became the Rothschilds, Red Shield. Well, just to tie this back to Candace. So Candace Owens, we know she married this guy, George Farmer, in a very strange circumstance. She met him a time, like maybe one time, and then 17 days later, he proposed over FaceTime, and she said yes. Very strange arrangement. I don't know what that's about, but the Farmer family, as you talk about in the book, goes way deep with the Rothschilds. And this family has been a longtime metals and commodity trading family, including gold, silver, oil, gas, and copper. His father was known as Mr. Copper in the City of London financial district, as you say. So then you have all these details about, this company gets bought up by this company, and then one was sold to the notorious Enron for $448 million, and it goes on and on. We know it's all a shell game with these people and their companies, but I just found this super interesting. So later, this guy, Berthold Rothschild, was sent to New York to establish the American Metal Company and the Société Le Nickel of France, which was founded by the Rothschilds. And Candace is always talking about French influence. Well, here it is. And then Farmer co-founded a metals and trading investment firm in 2005 called the Red Kite Group. And obviously, you track the association with the Rothschilds. Anyone trading commodities and metals at this level knows them. But
yeah,
if you're trying to rebrand like the Red Shield, I mean, a kite shape looks very much like a shield. So I just found this funny, and given the strange arrangement with Candace, I wonder if she'll ever start criticizing the Rothschilds.
Well, the thing is that you have Michael Farmer, who's now Candace Owens' father-in-law, who you rightly say was called Mr. Copper in the City of London. He's worth an absolute fortune. But he's also one of the leading players in an organization that goes back many decades and has the monarch, currently King Charles, as its patron. And it's an organization specifically designed and designated to fuse Christianity with Judaism.
There you go.
Zionism.
Yeah.
And it is a strange one that she marries into this family with this vehement Zionist father-in-law. She marries his son and then starts having a go at Israel. Now, in 2018, she traveled to Jerusalem with Charlie Kirk to attend the ceremony marking the movement of the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on the say-so of Trump, on the say-so of those that control Trump. And she posted on the internet a picture with her and Charlie Kirk saying that it was noted that there were no elected Democrats at the ceremony And basically, America and the world won't forget that, not supporting Israel. So she was a vehement pro-Israeli activist, as she was a vehement kind of progressive activist before she suddenly turned to Trump and became, quote, a conservative overnight. Then she marries into this Zionist family of Michael Farmer and starts having to go at Israel. I mean, there's a lot of things that are questions that should be asked but aren't being asked by enough people.
Right. And that's what tells me that the script changed. That's what tells me that she was all in on Zionism, and then she married into a Zionist elite family. And that signals to me, that signals to the people in the know, oh, okay, she's integrated now. And then she goes on the offensive against Israel, which to those in the know is like, okay, that's allowed because clearly she's more connected than she ever has been through this marriage. And when people tell me that Israel has to be made out to be the bad guy so it can be wiped out so that they can fulfill the prophecy, this is it. This is the leading influencer changing the story, or at least going in this new direction. And where will that direction be in a year or 2 years from now? Everybody in the world will probably hate Israel. It'll probably get wiped out and their plan will be fulfilled or whatever's going on. But it seems like that's a signal that the script changed. She's allowed to change her messaging.
The thing about Candace is she's had such dramatic changes of what her opinions are, both left to right and pro-Israel, anti-Israel, and so on. But the other thing is that there is a theme throughout her career that she's been very much involved with ultra-Zionist people who have boosted her career. And then she marries into this Michael Farmer family and then starts going against Israel. And, she's obviously close to Tucker Carlson. And together, they are basically the two most algorithmically prominent, quote, influencers in what's become known as the alternative media.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, and of course, Ian Carroll is close to Candace Owens and has fronted up her show when she's been away. So something doesn't absolutely feel right, to say the least. And then you have Carlson won't talk to me. You have Rogan won't talk to me. Because if I talked to Rogan, then I'd bring Musk up, who's his mate. If I talk to Carlson, I'd start questioning why he's so controlled by his religious belief when there's so much else beyond that to be explored. So it's like, hold the line.
Yeah.
Hold the line. This is the conspiracy. This is it. This is all there is. And that's why I keep saying to people, it's okay saying, Israel controls Trump, but you have to ask the next question. Who controls Israel? And then you ask the next question, who controls that which controls Israel?
Yes.
That's what you have to keep doing until you get to the absolute origin of it. It's not what people think it is.
That's true.
It's not even the Rothschilds. They're gophers, powerful as they are gophers at their level.
Yes, right on. This is really great. You are truly one of the best to ever do it. I'm honored to have these interviews with you. I hope people out there can get beyond what's given to them by the algorithm and stay connected to what and who they find valuable. Tell them where to get more David Icke in their lives if they feel so inclined.
Well, if they go to davidicke.com, that's my website, where there's news in context every day. And there's also iconic.com, which is a video platform, where there's documentaries galore, enormous library of documentaries now about all the subjects and many more we haven't talked about. The nature of reality, all of it. And of course, news shows virtually every day looking at events in the world as well.
Yes, I love it. I spent a lot of time there. So thanks again. Keep fighting the good fight and do take care.
Cheers, mate. All the best. Bye.
All right, friends, how we doing? Just happy to be alive, I hope, after all that recent bullshit about sending a country of 90 million people back to the Stone Age or saying a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I mean, that was yesterday. I know that one of the major issues Trump supporters have with the Trump critics is that they take everything he says far too literally and seriously when he's really being cavalier and speaking more hypothetically or off the cuff or conceptually, whatever. I understand that, but that's a level that I can't recall seeing before. Letting 90 million people come home from work or school and try to wind down after their day and just hear a sitting president on the other side of the world with the biggest military at their disposal say a whole civilization will die tonight, and they're talking about you? For what? There hasn't even been a good lie on this thing to make it make sense. There hasn't even been a false flag. Nothing. I mean, come on, you got to sell it. It's truly crazy. Every day it's something with this guy. Even the praise Allah on Easter was weird. Doesn't really bother me personally. No surprise there. But it seems odd given the type of person he spent so much time courting. And then I found out that Polymarket ran a bet for if he would praise Allah on Easter. So that is when it all made sense to me. Touche, Trump family. Touche. But you know, I'm always going to take the chance to spend time with David Icke when I have it. What's really funny is the whole reason we did this follow-up so soon is because in our last interview, I brought up all the Nick Land, CCRU, demon summoning stuff that I learned about from Isaac Weishaupt. And the whole idea of AI using us to build itself retroactively from the end of time. And David, at the time of that interview, said something like, hey, well, funny you brought this up. That's a big part of my next book, The Roadmap. And I'll make sure you get a copy and we'll talk about it. And to his credit, that did happen. But I didn't even bring that subject up because it's not a very big part of the book. Maybe he didn't even say big part, but he just referenced that the new book was in the works and that that material would be in it. Maybe there was some editing that went on. It is like 980 pages. And there is a chapter called Accelerating the Dark Enlightenment, which is, in that wheelhouse, but it focuses mainly on the accelerationism philosophy and how it's fueling the technocrats. It's an important element of the whole thing. But I think Nick Land is only mentioned twice and CCRU once. And to me, there's a lot more material there that is super interesting and deep, far beyond just accelerationism. But I also don't know how much it matters. I mean, any guy can come up with any wild stories he wants. The fact that he contacted something outside of the material reality probably is icing on that cake. But I haven't heard anyone really stick the landing when talking about how much influence this material and Nick Land's philosophy has amongst the technocratic elite. Like, it might be in the wheelhouse, but again, anybody can say anything. It's like, is it truly influential? Does it truly have an impact and drive things? I don't know. There's plenty of good material in the roadmap, clearly, but I think I had a different expectation built up because of that last interview and that one comment. I do have something in the works on that, though. I think as a solo show, the things I've heard, I just feel like, that's pretty good material to get into. And I guess I'll just wait to do it on my own. But when I do get David Icke into Saturn Moon Matrix talk, I definitely try to milk it for all it's worth. And it took us some time to get there. Sorry about that. There was definitely a big chunk of time spent on those he calls the gophers, as well as alt media figures. Obviously, I came right out of the gate with, hey, let's talk about current events and the geopolitical analysis of this situation. And it kind of ran its course pretty quickly. And we went into the other stuff that I know he is passionate about, because when I look at his Twitter feed, that's what he's been going hard at, is really the alt media figures. And I do think he has a good reason to be kind of mad about it, because it is actually very curious how they completely ignore him and have blackballed him. But you'd think if Alex Jones is okay for the 5th time on a lot of these big shows, then you would have David Icke on once. Maybe it is just all the Christian stuff. Alex Jones will have this posturing like he's basically pro-war and rah-rah American military, but he will say he's Christian. And I guess that's all that matters when it comes to the preferred positioning of someone who's going to talk conspiracy on a large platform. Because it's not about the views David would get, clearly, and it's not about him not being popular enough. A lot of these shows give Nick Fuentes more attention, and it just is weird to me. But their loss is my gain, I guess. So, as always, if you like the first hour, become a Plus member for the full show. Again, on this one, we got really into the Saturn talk in the Plus show, as well as some obscure stuff like hijacking and impacting thought processes and the role of graphene in that, and how graphene is tied to Saturn. Why the Akashic record should really be called the Archonic record. We got into that work Ringmakers of Saturn, which is another solo show I should probably do, but quite a few other things. And I do think David's sweet spot is focusing on those little threads, like the graphene thing, where you see all the symbolism and the hexagon shape and it relating to Saturn. And it's just so unique. You know, no one's doing that. That's what he should really make sure he fits into all of his interviews, rather than how he was there before Candace. But anyway, in higher side news, I'm sure you heard my pre-show announcement, but I did something kind of crazy. Something all these subscription-based business books would tell me not to do. And I removed the need for a credit card for a 7-day free Plus trial. Every marketing psychology guy would say I'm making a big mistake, but hey, they say that about not doing sponsored ads too. The reality is that I just don't feel the need to trick or incept anyone into Plus. I just hope people sign up because they like the show, and hearing literally twice as much of it is worth a few bucks, and that stacks up to be a solid living for myself and family. Working so far. And it doesn't cost me anything if people get a trial and then don't sign up. So it's fine. I want the material to be heard. So there it is. I'm betting on myself that we have a good enough thing that if you're interested and you try the trial, you'll be sold on what's on the other side. So you just push a button on the front page, use your email for a username, and you make a password, and you have full access to everything for 7 days. Let's see what happens. Go forth and enjoy, and what a good one to start on, right? So that's number 4 with David Icke. I can hardly believe this is my job. Very, very lucky. And speaking of me being lucky, the last episode with A.W. Finnegan about his book Sleeper Agent and ticks and biowarfare and his personal experiences, that was a hit. That was the hit I expected. A 4.7. I know some people have their minds made up about viruses and germ theory, and they just can't buy any of that stuff, whatever. But bacteria is real. Venom is real. Plenty of things can jack you up and can be manipulated in a lab and all that, or extracted from nature and then manipulated. I've seen some recent videos of people shaking off hundreds of ticks from their jacket after a walk in the woods and up in the Northeast, basically. So if you think it's harmless, well, go prove it, because that shit is scary as hell to me. I didn't expect ticks to be one of my big fears, but I'd rather run into an alligator, to tell you the truth. I also saw in the comments a shocking amount of Plus people that were talking about actually dealing with Lyme themselves, or having close friends and family that deal with Lyme. One couple even talked about their experience getting alpha-gal and made some really good points about the difficulties that I never considered. It's not just dietary, that you can no longer eat animal products, but even medications and all sorts of supplements and vitamins. Just anything processed likely contains some sort of something, bovine protein or some weird animal thing in it. It just seems like a really hard condition to have and navigate living in this society with. I empathize greatly. And maybe it's short of a dozen, I didn't count, but it seems like every other comment was about people with personal connections to Lyme, and I thought it was more rare than that, to be honest, but I loved that interview overall. Great narrative, great story. Glad it was well liked, as I thought it would be. As for the meetup calendar, let's look at the next events coming up. This weekend, Friday, April 10th, we got the Rune Supers meeting up in Amsterdam, looking to cross paths with THC fans at Belly of the Beast. April 12th, Wild Terra meetup, again, somewhere in the Midwest, somewhere that has cider. I can't tell you more. And then we have on April 19th in Vancouver, British Columbia, the Alibi Room meetup. And on April 26th, we have Black Stack Brewing in St. Paul, Minnesota. April 26th as well, Trails Cafe in LA. We're definitely bringing them some business, as well as Gail Brath's Ale House, April 27th in Auckland, New Zealand. Great. Get more details or make your own events and meet more like-minded locals. That's what it's all about. HigherSideMeetups.com. And that's the show. Thanks for listening. Get that credit card less free plus trial while you can. Link right there in the show notes. Thanks again to David Icke. It's an honor every time I get to do it. Take care of you and yours. I've done my part. Your move, engineered alt media misinformers, archonic agents of the big cult, and Saturn moon matrix manipulators. Your fucking move.
I see you sitting in traffic, and you look so stuck. No sense of adventure, just a routine fuck. They can diagnose depression, but don't know why you're bored. Mystery comes knocking, but you don't answer the door. No, there are lights in the sky, not found on any map. Creatures deep in the forest that no ranger has tagged. There are things in the ocean you won't see from the land. Life's under no obligation to make sure you understand. I'm told the truth is out there when you get past the lies. It comes when you least expect it, and it wears a disguise. It'll tell you everything just for a goof. Can't take any pictures, won't have any proof. So I watch you live like you never wanted it. A lost soul that's forgotten what really haunted is. You didn't ask, but just let me say, this is a horrible approach to seizing the day. There are things you can know that you can't even think. No doctor has medicine like the shaman's next drink. Sleep is never better than inside of the dream. Who promised you anything would be as it seems? I'm told the truth is out there when you get past the lies. It comes when you least expect it, and it wears a disguise. It'll tell you everything, everything, just for a goof. Can't take any pictures, won't have